something happened to young people born after 1995. All of a sudden, in the early 2010s, their mental health collapsed, rates of anxiety and depression skyrocketed, self-harm is up like 150% for younger teen girls, suicide is up 50%. Something happened in the early 2010s. And my argument in the book is a tragedy in two acts. The first act is the loss of the play-based childhood. Then we get Act Two, which is the arrival of the phone-based childhood. If we love our children, the best thing we can give them is a real human childhood.
Well, hey, welcome to Prairie Lakes Church. We're so glad that you joined us here this weekend, and I'll call it out from the beginning. This one is just a little bit different, okay? We're in the middle of our Anxious Generation series where we're looking at the rising trends of mental health crisis, reliance on technology, and just the overall well-being of Gen Z. And so we have some panelists on here that we're excited to introduce and will help us guide through this discussion to kind of get us to where we're going here today. And so my name's Justin Simmons. I am the high school pastor. I've been in that role for about 7 years here at the Cedar Falls campus. And you all know this guy, Jesse Tink, lead pastor, old news.
Yeah, who cares?
Snorefest.
Nobody cares.
No one cares. We're really excited about Jesse is these two panelists that we have here today. Savannah Swetska, you are the principal at Hanson Elementary School in Cedar Falls. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
And then Jeff Bell, the at-risk director at the Hudson Community School District. Thank you so much for being here as well.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. So we're going to dive into some questions here, but I want to make sure everyone across Iowa knows just a little bit more about you and your experience and why we've asked you to be around here for this panel. And so Savannah, I'll start with you. How long have you been at Prairie Lakes?
I first came to Prairie Lakes in 2004 when I came to UNI as a freshman and journeyed through the college ministry through my years at UNI and had about an 8-year stint in Iowa City for my first teaching positions and then returned to the Cedar Valley and Prairie Lakes Church in 2017.
Awesome. And then tell me about your family. Married, kids?
Yeah, my husband Ben and I have one daughter, Vivian, who is 6, soon to be 7.
Awesome. Very cool. And then have you served around Prairie Lakes at all in your time here?
I have served both in the college ministry and also in We Kids.
Awesome. And then tell us more about your experience as an educator. What type of roles have you had?
I was a special education teacher, kindergarten teacher, special education coordinator, and principal, and this is my 16th year.
Awesome. Awesome. So cool. Now, Jeff, I got the same questions for you, okay? How long have you been around Prairie Lakes Church?
My family and I started attending right around 2012, 2013.
Awesome. Very cool. And then same question for you. What does your family look like? Married, kids, grandkids maybe?
Yeah. So I've been married to my wonderful wife, Micah, it'll be 32 years this summer. I have 3 kids. My oldest daughter, Maddie, and her husband, Brett, have given us 2 amazing granddaughters, Marley and Bryn. I have a freshman in college, Camden, and I have a sophomore in high school, Owen.
Awesome. And then how have you been involved around Prairie Lakes over the years?
I've done sods. I'm currently on Sod Squad. I do snow removal in the winter. I get to play on the big tractor out back.
There we go. Somebody gets to do that.
I love doing that. Reset after activities every now and then here. We've done that with even our small group at times, and then worship and production.
Awesome. Very cool. And then how long have you been in education? What types of roles have you had?
I took my first classroom in 1995 in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. So I've taught.
So 1995. Is that right? So how old were you?
I was born before that.
Yeah, but how much longer before?
1 year. It still counts. Well, I was born before that, 94.
So when Justin was 1, you started teaching. Continue.
That's great.
I think that makes me the oldest up here.
Yeah, well, a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
I see what's going on. So many moons ago, I've taught all the way from 8th grade down to 4th grade. And actually, I need to correct that because I actually taught for a year. I taught kindergarten and first grade PE. And then I've coached, taught all the way down to fourth grade. And then I started an administrative role at Hudson in 2015 that I'm currently in.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, we are excited and are grateful that you guys are here. The perspective that they're going to bring is going to be super helpful to us. So we're going to experience that in a second. But before Justin continues to kind of just draw some knowledge and experience out of these two, I wanted to just talk to the rest of us just for a second about not just what we're doing this weekend, but why. Because we're used to, at this point in our service, listening to me or Pastor John or Pastor Chip talk for about 30 minutes, right? And it's our routine. It's great to interrupt that routine every once in a while, especially on topics like this one this weekend, which are very practical. And so we're still going to have I promise you it's going to be a biblical conversation, but it's going to be where the truth that we listen to gets played out. It reminds me something Jesus says in John 5, and he's talking to people in John 5, specifically the Pharisees, who have just gotten really used to just kind of sitting and listening, okay? So look at what he says. This is John 5:39. He says this. He goes, "You study the scriptures diligently," which you're like, well, good, right? That's a good thing. Studying the scripture, diligent, studying the Bible, that's a good thing. But hang on with what he's about to say. You study the scriptures diligently because you think that in them you have eternal life. And he says this, "These are the very scriptures that testify about me, yet you refuse to come to me to have life." It's not enough to just sit and listen. There's something that compels us to respond. There's always a gap between what we know in our head and then what we're living out. And I think weekends like this help us close that gap, which I'm really excited for. So that's part of the reason why we're doing a little bit different. Here's the other thing, okay? Topics like this, phones, for example, anxiety, technology, we're all going to bring a different set of perspectives. We may not all have the same perspective, right? We may be challenged even a couple times a week. In fact, I hope we are. That's usually where the learning kind of comes in. But anytime we approach a topic like this where, everybody kind of has a different set of perspectives and maybe some blind spots, we always like to go back to, it's a verse we've gone back to several times over these last 5 years. And it's from James, okay? And so James says this. He goes, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick. Everyone should be quick to listen. Quick to listen. Everyone should be slow to speak, and slow to become angry," right? Quick, slow. That was a motto. It continues to be a motto for us. I mean, both of these guys are educators. They've been in the kind of the hub of some really divisive things. Technology being one of them, honestly. And the more that we're able to kind of put what James tells us to action here, quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry, because human anger doesn't produce the righteousness that God requires. Getting rid of all moral filth and evil is so prevalent. Let's humbly accept the word planted in us, which can save us. Let's not be merely listeners of the word. We want to be people who kind of live it out. So just thank you guys in advance for helping us kind of grab onto these scriptures and actually live them out this weekend.
Yeah, because Pastor John started the conversation out last week with giving us kind of the overview of the book a little bit, but also just like the biblical principles that are informing the way we have this discussion around anxiety and the next generation. And so what we wanted to do is get some real experience and some real practical observations that both of you have made to maybe help answer the question, is this really happening in our Iowa communities, or is this something that just lives in theory? So the first question I had is that there's this growing set of data that shows anxiety and mental health is on the rise. And so how have you guys observed that trend in your own professional spaces?
So my role, pre-K through 12th grade, when I came into this role in 2015, we were really starting to see things on a larger level happen. And we realized at that point in time that we needed to expand our resources. And so we've gone through that process of, working with partners within the community, to kind of meet these needs of higher rates of anxiousness and how that's impacting students on a daily basis, partnering with outside agencies, getting them to come in, expanding the staff that we have to address that in our school district, and making sure that we're kind of closing that circle with home and at school, because not that it is our business or it is our job for what goes on at home, so much of what plays out at home does connect to what goes on at school. And so to close that circle when kids are dealing with those types of things is so important. And then expanding how we accommodate that at the school level, especially after COVID. COVID took it to a whole nother level, and as far as what we see, how often we see it, intensity, duration, all those things.
Yeah, and that's directly informing how you respond to that in your area too. Yeah, Savannah, how would you say?
I would say technology has certainly complicated the concerns and the big worries that kids are walking through the door with. At one point, you experienced interactions with kids in conflict face to face. And when school ended, the conflict remained there. And with the use and excessive availability of technology for kids outside of school at a very young age, we see kids continuing that conversation or the conflict via technology outside of school, and a lot goes on after they leave us and before they return the next day. And sometimes we see that infiltrate into the school day and start to interrupt the learning environment. And so what we've really tried to do is equip our staff and teachers with just a basic understanding of what is anxiety and how do we think about it not just from a technology perspective, but how do we define it? What does it mean? And so we have partnered as a district with Lynn Lyons, who is a psychotherapist on the East Coast, and she very simply has taught us that anxiety is the overestimation of an emergency situation when it really is not, and an underestimation of the resources that I have to manage it. So if a tiger came running across the stage and chased me right now and I went, ah! and I went running, that would be a reasonable response to that situation, right? It wouldn't be like, oh, look, Savannah's anxiety went running. That was weird. That would be reasonable, right? Emergency situation, my response matches that. At times, kids and adults both experience things that are uncertain and uncomfortable, but it doesn't mean that they're dangerous. And both our mind and our bodies respond to things as if they're emergencies, and they absorb resources within us that aren't needed. And we sort of freeze, and our whole body responds to that in very, very tangible ways. Your stomach starts to hurt and things start shutting down, because if I am trying to survive the attack of a tiger, I do not need that digestive system. I don't need that right now. And so things start changing quickly in response to the situation. And so we have to sort of know what it is. We have to put a definition to it and recognize when it shows up.
Yeah, so these trends are really showing up in the real world. Like, we're having to create systems and structures to respond to them. And so this doesn't just live in a textbook or a data set. Like, this is real. So like, what are maybe some of those real concerns or problems that students are walking in with? They're asking teachers, counselors, administrators, like, this is what I'm dealing with. What are some of those things?
Well, I think it's important to know that I think a lot of things that maybe we relate to as things that we went through, kids are still going through today, but they're experiencing them differently. Savannah touched on it. Kids are bombarded with their choices sometimes long after they've made them, and I think that's while it may not be the cause necessarily of anxiety, it may be, but at minimum, it's definitely a complicator, and it definitely confuses things where, a student, a child, a kid, a college student, or even beyond that, in a moment in time can make a decision with their phone through social media, through Snapchat, through a number of things that when I was a kid, if I made that choice, maybe nobody saw it, but now, because it's made with the phone, because it's made with social media, those types of things, they don't get to leave it. They don't get to walk away from it, and it follows them. And, you know, with technology just so readily available, both at school and outside of school, it follows them. There's no escaping some of their choices. So it only makes sense that anxiety and depression are complications for kids and on the rise in that respect. And you see it far too often.
Yeah.
I would say the things or the topics that students are presenting anxiety around can really vary. And it doesn't quite matter what it is. It could be about conflict. It could be about relationships. It could be about the thing that someone said to me that really, really hit me at my core. What creates anxiety or what creates the worry really differs from person to person. And it doesn't have to be the same as for you as it does for me. And so what we really tried to do is help just name it. And again, Lynn Lyon calls this externalizing it. Just pull it out, give it a name. And in my house, my worries, I named them Stella. And my daughter named her worry unkindness. And so when Stella shows up, you say, "Hi, Stella. So nice to see you. Of course you'd be here when I'm sitting on a stage talking to a whole lot of people." That makes great sense. And you recognize that she's here. And you acknowledge that she's in the room. And you say, "Thanks for coming, but this is going to be a little uncertain. I'm not sure that we know exactly where this conversation is going. And a little uncomfortable. There's a lot of people looking back at us. But I'm here for this." And so I lean into the skills that it takes to communicate and what I need to journey through that uncomfortable and unpredictable feeling. So what creates anxiety, or the things that kids are walking in with as worries, really differ. But the way that we respond to them as adults are really about skills. How do we help kids build the skills for recognizing when worry shows up and responding to worry when worry would like to convince us that we can't handle it?
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to start naming my worry Jesse. So if anyone wants to borrow that name for their worry, sounds like a good one to me.
I'm cool with that.
Yeah. That's perfect. Because no, it's really those are the tools that we can use to equip the anxiety. And like Jeff said, like this isn't necessarily new. It's just the world that these students that are in this room here with us, they're growing up in, is just different. And so we have to continue equipping our students with the ways that we can cope and ways that we can process that anxiety. And really, it comes down to kind of my next question here is about partnership with parents. You know, Jesse, like the church, our family ministry team. We have a strong desire to partner with families. I know the schools and you both as well have a strong desire to partner with parents and families to help students walk through everything that they have. And so our family ministry team, we kind of embrace what we call the orange philosophy. And so it starts with red being the heart of the home, and then yellow being the light of the church, light of Jesus. Put those two together, you get?
Green.
You get orange.
Oh,
you get orange.
orange.
You get orange. And really, it's a simple just metaphor of like, hey, together we can accomplish something that we couldn't do alone. And so, you know, while we're trying to bring that light of Jesus, the light of the church, with the partnership of the family, like we want to, and sometimes it's hard to break through the noise.
Super challenging thing to get through, you know, because even as a parent, right, like I try to sort through all the communications that I get from our school because it's important, you know. And then, you know, fail at that. You guys had the same problem. I try to sort through all the wonderful things that at my church, our church, I got 2 kids in student ministry, you know, that student is going on. I don't always. So I'm really curious as from the two of you, how do you do that? How do you start breaking through and partnering with us as parents and families?
Yeah, you have a captive audience right here.
Yeah.
And so breaking through all the inbox and the noise, what would you say? How would you want families to partner with you guys in this role as educators?
I feel safer answering this question as a father, and you know, and even as a papa. But just because as an educator, I don't ever want a family or a parent to think that I know the best decision for them to make with their family situation and what's going on in their home with the values that they esteem and and that they press. But I go back to a conversation that I had last weekend at Peppers with my family after the sermon, and just having a conversation, and my freshman in college son kind of makes a comment about, hey, this is our world. Technology, social media, all of that, always there, always going on. This is our world.
Yep.
You have to help us figure it out. But you got to let us figure it out. And I just as I've thought about that and contemplated, even talked about it with my wife, what keeps coming back to me is we need to provide our kids time. And I heard an administrator once kind of compare social media technology right now, maybe fairly or unfairly, to when we were growing up and stuff like that, to cigarettes, where everybody did it. It was everywhere you went, restaurant, wherever, cigarettes were there, smoking was there.
Yep.
But I don't think until later we realized a lot of the things that accompanied that and the dangers that led to. I think we're kind of there now with technology, and we would never take our kid and drive out in the middle of a lake on a windy day, and nobody would drive. I guess you would take a boat.
That's true.
You can drive a boat.
You can drive a boat.
That was a bad one. I mean, if you do, you probably won't make it far.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't take a boat out in the middle of a lake and just say, hey, to our child, or, throw them overboard and say, good luck swimming,
Right.
paddle.
Right.
We wouldn't do that. And so I think the way that we can buy our kids time is to prepare them and gradually be intentional, be purposeful in the way that we hand technology to them, the way that they manage and that they're going to navigate social media and just that world, because they're very good at all the technical pieces of it, right? But are we really preparing them for what it looks like and what the world's going to require of them going forward?
That's good. Yeah.
I would say it is always our desire to connect with families. And something I tell my staff often is we've got to humanize this experience for them and for ourselves. We're just as human as kids and parents, and our desire is mutual. We want to connect with you in this partnership of the hours you entrust your kids to us. We want that to be meaningful. We want kids to feel connected to school and to trusted adults in school as well. And so that's always our desire. And if we know that anxiety shows up when things are uncertain and uncomfortable, that is literally our fundamental purpose. Kids come to us to learn things they don't know yet. And so talking about uncomfortable and unfamiliar, we do it every day. Our kids do it every single day. And so how can we partner in that together? Something else that Lynn Lyons talks a lot about is there is no anxious kid without an anxious adult in their world. If you were to ask a kid who navigates big worries, who is the worrier in your house? They would be able to answer that. There's often a really strong connection. And so if we're talking about building skills for kids, we want to also help equip and communicate and work alongside families and building skills for them to also know how to lean into discomfort and uncertainty alongside their child.
Yeah. This is just one of those topics. I mean, and I hope you, as you're listening to Jeff and Savannah give their answers, it's one of those topics that remind us that we're part of a community and that we have to be in relationship with each other, and that it works the best when we're all kind of pulling in the same direction. It's for that reason and another one that we're just gonna. This is gonna be one of those topics that we talk about regularly, and because right now, and maybe more so, I don't know, but I don't want to be exaggerative, but maybe more so than any other point in our country's history, right now is the time where divisiveness is monetized. And there's a lot of money to be made when you can make enemies out of people. And I've just learned to be suspicious of that voice that says, you're on this side and you're on this side, and go ahead and fight. Because a lot of times they're just kind of wanting us to be on different sides so they can capture our attention and feed us whatever they want to feed us. There's a verse in Ephesians that I think is a good reminder in topics like this of the power of unity when we see the same thing and we're all pursuing the same thing in the same direction. But here's what it requires, and this is why Paul says this. He goes, be completely humble and gentle. Humble means, consider someone else's perspective before your own. And then be gentle with each other. Be gracious with each other. Educators, parents, all of us, we're just doing the best that we can, right? We're kind of figuring it out as we go along. But for us to be humble towards one another, gentle with one another, bearing with one another in love, make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. There's one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to one hope when you were called, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. Especially when we do this because we share in Jesus. Because regardless of what we're seeing happen in our world and what our kids are dealing with, when we decide that these things are more important to be on the same page about together, it is an amazing opportunity we have to be a witness to a larger story and a God who is a God of humility and gentleness as we navigate the complexities of this world.
Yeah, and this conversation, when we were talking about the next generation, is the perfect place to put that verse into practice, to really do what it's saying.
Agreed.
As we're kind of nearing the end of our conversation, but I don't want to end on the negativity or even just that like doom and gloom spot, because I've worked with our students around here for 7 years, and I'm very hopeful in the students that I interact with that they're going to figure something out, and they've got a bright future ahead of them. So I'm just, for your perspectives, where do you see hope in this next generation? How would you encourage us in that?
Well, again, my perspective now for the last 10 years has been kindergarten, preschool, all the way through high school. And, you see the progression of what kids are experiencing and dealing with, and then you see them graduate. And you see them give speeches, you see them put papers together for scholarships and stuff like that, and you're just, you look at their accomplishments and the things that they're involved with and what they do, and you realize that they're amazing collaborators. They're so resourceful. They're able to juggle a lot of different things at the same time in a way that I really, at their age, would have struggled to understand, and their competency with technology and navigating that is just so amazing. And so their capacity to perform and accomplish tasks is amazing, and so it just makes you realize how much of a job we have to protect that potential and that capacity from things that, could become more than hurdles and more than speed bumps. But I feel good because, I'm starting to look at that part of my life where it's like, okay, these graduating seniors this year, they're going to be taking care of me. And I'm feeling all right about that.
Good. Wow, good.
I would say I find hope in just knowing that all of us are malleable. We can learn new things. We can lean into something that's hard and come out on the other side having built a skill or let an experience drive us in a way that maybe we work really hard to avoid. And also just recognizing that technology can be driving some of these biggest worries. It can be the thing we need to get uncomfortable about. It can be the thing that we need to set more limitations around that can create some divide in relationship as the person enforcing that limit. But we also are malleable and can do the hard thing, even if it's the right thing.
Yeah,
That's really good.
that's good.
Hey, before we close out, we're going to take a moment to pray over these two and actually all of the folks in education. But before we do that, can we just give Savannah and Jeff a round of applause, please? Very well done. Hey, we would. I mean, this is your church, and we are for you. And we get a chance to kind of put that on display even this weekend. So how can we be praying for you guys individually, your districts, your staff? Coach us up. How can we lift you guys up?
I go to all the people that I work with over the years, teachers, educators, people involved with school, they desire to have their best day. Not always easy.
Yep.
And one thing that I would always tell my kids, my children, before they ever left the house, dropped them off at school, I would say to them, guard your heart. Proverbs 4:23, and I checked to make sure that I was quoting this correctly. But it's, above all else, guard your heart, for out of it come the issues of life.
Yeah.
And so I would tell them every day before they leave, and I still do this. I tell them, guard your heart. And I think that's where, especially the end of the school year, we all want to go in and we all want to make that day the best day for our kids, the best environment we can make. But it's the end of the year. Big things don't choose when to happen, they just happen.
Yeah.
And so, pray that we just, our hearts not guarded in the sense from being honest and being unique, but guarding why we're there, what we're doing, so that we continue to do it for the reason why we started doing it.
Good.
I often say that teaching and being in education has never been easy. I don't know that it's also ever been harder than it is in 2025. And so praying for people to have joy till the very, very end. It's also a time that we're reflecting on the year, and often in conversations with teachers at this time of year, I always ask, this was the only second grade teacher that your students were going to have. They're not going to have another one. It's you. When they think back to their second grade teacher, it will be your face and your name that they remember most. And on their last day with you, what do you hope that they walk out the door remembering? And it's never about that one story we read or that math lesson I did. It's always about, I remember the way that my teacher connected with me. I remember the relationship that they built, and I want my kids to remember and know that I created a safe place for them, and that we did hard things together. That's what teachers are desiring in this season. So I would just pray for energy and fresh starts, that every day would be a new beginning, and that our families and parents would have opportunities to reflect with their own kids in this arena too. Oftentimes we think about how do we model flexibility and unpredictability. Sometimes at the dinner table that looks like going around and just sharing what was the unexpected thing that happened to you today, so that we can start naming it and we can start experiencing it and letting our kids see that even as adults we experience very uncomfortable and unpredictable things. And then I would also just pray that we could all be a little more like cooked spaghetti. That if you handed a piece of uncooked spaghetti to a kid and said, I want you to make that flexible. They all break into very small pieces, but if you hand them a piece of cooked spaghetti, they start to make the correlation of what flexibility looks like, how it shows up, and how malleable it actually can be. So may we all be more cooked spaghetti.
Yeah. I'm going to pray for the first time in my life that we'll be cooked spaghetti.
There we go.
Hey, across Iowa, if you're comfortable, okay, could you just extend a hand towards the stage or towards the screen? And let's just lift these two and all of our educators across Iowa up if we could. Father in heaven, we're grateful for this weekend. We're grateful for Jeff. We're grateful for Savannah. God, we're grateful for the teachers and the administrators and the educators and the support staff across Iowa who every single day, God, just want what's best for our kids. God, I do want to pray that we would be cooked spaghetti, but even more than that, God, I would pray that you would challenge us to be an asset. God, that we would be for these women and men who are just doing their best, and God, who are in it really for the right reasons. God, that we would be for these folks, that we would continue to pray and lift them up. God, to protect their joy, protect the vision for why they're doing what they're doing. And God, as we hit May and everybody's kind of done, Father, that they would do their best to bring their best selves, and that everybody would do the same. And so we lift them up to you, God. We're grateful for them. Jesus, we pray all of this in your name, and everybody said, amen.